Being a business leader is full of challenges, and having the right infrastructure to support your business needs and your team is critical. But there's no need to worry, as I'm joined by a panel of industry experts to help navigate us through this often confusing landscape. Welcome to Dell Drive. And today I'm joined by Dan, Aisling and Richi as we take on the challenge of executing your vision. So team, I'm a customer that's worked with Dell Technologies to identify my problems that I've got in my organisation. I've then devised a plan alongside you. Then we've got to execute. But for an organisation, execution can be one of the most daunting elements. How can we aid and assist that execution, Dan?
Well, having a plan is a really great place to start. Now, what most of our customers are asking us for is a way of modernizing their management and their deployment methodologies to use something like Microsoft Intune, for example. Largely, that's been driven by the shift away from working all in the office to a mixed office and remote workforce. Quite often, the customer is not ready to move all the way from where they are today to this modern platform. So we often have to engineer some kind of coexistence. So using the skills they already have, the investments they've already made in their infrastructure they have today to manage what part of their infrastructure, but then also to be able to have this new modern deployment infrastructure. I say Microsoft Intune is what we work with primarily, but have this modern platform available to manage those devices that are outside the office, for example. It's a great big challenge for them to do it. And often, whilst they have great skills in their existing platform, they don't have the skills to do that transition to the new platform. Now, obviously, one of the things they'll want to do is to get those skills to run that platform. But in that gap between old and new, we can absolutely help them by guiding them from where they are to how to deploy this new platform.
This is where we lean on all of our industry expertise because we've seen this scenario so many times previously, haven't we?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. We've done it with a number of our customers already, quite a few, especially since about 2020 or so. So we've seen a number of ways of not doing it correctly. So we're able to avoid those potholes in the road and get the customer to where they need to be in a smooth and simpler way as possible.
Aisling, when we think of an IT overhaul or an upgrade, we tend to think of the end user and a new product with new solutions and systems on it. But that must be a logistical nightmare. You've got so many different users, so many pieces of equipment. How do we go about helping with support in that area as well?
Well, first and foremost, I would advise that we get the stakeholder buy-in, right? Because the likes of the end users or the HR department are key to the decision making and the rollout of the new kit. So we can bring kit on site, we can get it from our loan depot, we can bring a roadshow on site to bring everything. It tends to work best on customer sites where they've actually narrowed what they want from a kit list, right? So they've maybe come up with 3 or 5 different types of desks that they would have. They set them up, they can leave them there for a month if it's loan depot kit, and they can get each of their end users and people within departments to test, give feedback, see what works best. They can look at the ecosystem, they can look at the actual device and how it works alongside their applications itself. One of the common concerns that we see is people moving from 2 screens to 1 screen. They think I'm getting less screen real estate, but it is larger. And the fact of the matter is they need to sit there and play with the screen and see how it's going to help them work more productively.
So it's like a mock setup that we can go in and create.
Exactly. Well, we say mock setup, but the idea is that somebody would use that desk for the entire day and give some great feedback on it to help push to the IT department one way or the other. The other thing that we see, which can generally be of a surprise to IT departments, is that HR come along and they like to get involved in the conversation too. That's obviously really important for talent retention as well as talent acquisition. And sometimes IT tend not to pay attention to that aspect in the planning phase. So it's great to see the lines of communication opened up there between those stakeholders.
Well, with an organisation having that on site, kind of like a demo as it were, it means that you can have all the stakeholders involved drop in and test out the equipment. You're not just dealing directly possibly with a decision maker or an end user. It's there for everybody to utilise.
It's there for everybody to utilise, and it means if people feel like they've bought into the actual decision, regardless of if it went the way that they personally preferred it to, they're going to be way more on board with the deployment of the kit and start to utilize it better.
So Richie, someone like yourself might facilitate this, right? You're going to touch base with the organisation and perhaps they've made a certain commitment, but they're not sure what pieces of kit they need or what services and solutions. You could be responsible for something like this happening.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really about making sure that you work with the end user and the customer ultimately to make sure they have the best possible experience and they get the right results. So ultimately you want to have that organisation happy with whatever that solution is. So whether you're talking about hardware, whether you're talking about how they manage the actual products that they have out there, it's getting the right mix and dynamics together that everything fits as it should. So it might be, as Ashley talked about earlier, about having that, involvement of the stakeholders to understanding what the pain points are for those individual IT staff team that look after those, manage those products to make sure not only does the back end have a smooth and frictionless transition, but also the front end has the best possible experience as well. And when you dovetail the two, then hopefully you have a winning formula at the end.
We need to talk about device management as well. So we've implemented as part of the execution, but there's a lot that's had to happen in the background before that. Perhaps if you want to implement a new operating system such as Windows 11. Yeah,
there's lots of things. I mean, sometimes Windows 11 is seen as this big, massive change, and it really isn't, because ultimately you had Windows 10. Back in the day, you had Windows 7, and the 7 to 10 was a big jump, but the 10 to 11 is a lot smaller. It's not as fundamental as it was previously. So people are seeing that as almost like you have to evolve with the state of the software as it evolves over time, and you have to match that with not only the hardware that you have to run those systems, but making sure the back end is suitable for it as well. And obviously from a Dell Technologies perspective, we have the teams that we can call in to advise, give guidance to the various tools, free tools that they can utilize to maximize that experience and give the IT team the best chance of having success at the end of the day.
I guess you'd probably begin that process way before any new devices end up on site.
Absolutely. We have the teams that can come in and actually run those through the sort of experience that you could potentially have with those systems and how those tools help the actual IT team and ultimately give the end user a better experience from day one.
So the ecosystem that we offer, even if there's a skills gap or a resource gap within an organisation across the board or within the IT department or for an end user as an individual, that ecosystem means that we can fill in any gaps perhaps that will be there, and we cover all bases, Dan.
Absolutely. So, frequently, as I said, we've talked about migration from an old system to a new system, and the skills to do the migration. Let me be clear, it's that transitional piece that's the challenge, and often those skills are not readily available within the customer, but they're used to operating and running a system, which is exactly what their job is, right? So we're able to fill in those gaps in terms of helping them go from point A to point B to where they want to be, to the future state. It also allows us to help them with things like we talked about Windows 11. So Windows 11, whilst the transition at the desktop is relatively minor, some things change on the desktop. So yes, that is a slight change, and it's a more modern environment for the end user. But the real benefit for moving to Windows 11 happens in the background. So it means increased security and so on. There are many good benefits to moving to Windows 11 from an IT operations perspective, but there's work to be done in order to take advantage of those benefits, not least of which it's looking at which pieces of equipment you may have in your estate that can't run Windows 11 and may need to be upgraded.
And alongside Dell Technologies, once you've executed this new plan in place, hopefully solving some of the issues that you've had previous, what outcomes does that lead to for the end user, which then hopefully leads to outcomes for the IT departments and then the outcomes for an organisation?
I think it's a better end story for both sides, really. So the IT team have to focus on, or are able to focus on other things, because if you get it right first off, you're not going to have someone knocking on your door saying, my laptop's not working, or it's not functioning as it should be, etc. Haven't got enough, whether it's RAM or whatever that could be, haven't got sufficient screens for what I want to do. So getting the right solution in front of the end user means that they can get on with their job, which is often what they're paid to do. From an IT perspective, it means that they can say, right, okay, we've done all the background, we've done all the hard lifting on getting this in place. Now that runs smoothly. Now we can get onto other projects that we're doing within the industry and in the organisation as itself. So therefore, they get to do other things rather than the mundane stuff that actually automation and good planning should actually eliminate from their day.
And then fundamentally, what does that mean for an organisation then, Aisling?
I think it means more and more productivity and better results from the end users. You know, Richie touched on displays there. If I'm, you know, the accounting department, I'll want a widescreen display so I can see my entire spreadsheet all at once, as opposed to being the marketing department where I might want a 4K monitor, you know. It's all about the right tools for the person to make them as productive as possible. I was reading an article the other day about the importance of video conferencing. We all video conference. How often do we turn on our webcams?
I like my face. I do it all the time.
We tend to do it when other people who are on the call do it.
True.
And the importance of the nonverbal, picking up on the nonverbal cues and communication, as well as building the relationships. It's so important. So we need all of these ecosystems. We need our devices to be able to support the experience that we're promoting. So super important to get it right. And there's people like me around to help with that.
Well, sorry, Dan, did you want to add to that?
I was going to say, yeah, I mean, that end user experience for the knowledge workers is critical. It's absolutely important as it drives the bottom line of the company. But also the experience of the IT organization, the individuals that work there is hugely important. A lot of what they do is boring and repetitive. And if we can find ways of taking away the boring, repetitive, low value tasks, then, you know, they're going to be much happier and much more likely to be productive and provide a better end user experience at the end of the day.
Well, Dan, Aisling, Richie, your knowledge has been invaluable, so thank you for spending the time with us today. Now it's over to you guys. Challenge us not only to identify and plan, but execute your IT vision for your organisation. Hit us up in the comments section and feel free to share, and don't forget to check out more in the Dell Drive Club.